Welcome to my viewers. If you're out here looking for unsettling true stories, you've come to the right place. Tonight I'm going to tell you about something that happened to me when the world was already falling apart. But what happened to me out in those mountains made everything else feel like background noise. This took place back in 2020, during the peak of the pandemic. The world had shut down, cities were silent, streets empty, everyone was locked inside their homes. But I wasn't. I'm an avid backpacker, and while the rest of the world was isolating indoors, I used the moment as an excuse to get far away from civilization. Out in the wilderness, I hit up several national parks during that time, camping alone in remote areas. It was my way of detoxing. One of those places was a creek nestled deep within Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. Now, without giving away my identity, let's just say that something went down in my life in 2019. Something big, a professional mistake, the kind that wrecks reputations and careers. A lot of people lost money, and I became public enemy number one in a very specific corner of the world. The fallout was intense. I had to change apartments, switch phone numbers, and eventually quit my job. For months, I was getting anonymous calls and texts, some threatening, others just cruel. It got to the point where I didn't know if it was one obsessed person or a group taking turns, but eventually it all just stopped. Or so I thought. At the time of this story, I wasn't working. I was trying to recover, to find myself again. That's why I was camping so much. I drove 3 hours to the park, parked my truck, and hiked alone up a snow-dusted trail toward a quiet creek. It was completely empty, no surprise, given the early lockdowns and the fact that it was still winter. The snow was shallow but hard-packed, and every step I took made that loud, unmistakable crunch. It was eerie, sure, but also peaceful. Exactly what I needed. Eventually I found the creek still flowing, not frozen, and chose a spot a little off the trail to pitch my tent. After setting up, I chopped some wood, got a fire going, and cooked up some sausages. Then I sat back, pulled out a book, and started reading beside the fire. It was shaping up to be a perfect night, until it wasn't. As the sun dipped low and the woods grew dark, I threw on my headlamp and lit up a joint. A few hits in, and I was nice and relaxed. That's when my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, assuming it was my brother or someone from my family, but it wasn't. It was a string of texts, all from an unknown number. Area code 23, Connecticut. The first message said, "How's your camping going, buddy? Then it's beautiful out here. And finally I see why you came up here." My stomach dropped. My heart raced. I froze, staring at the screen. This wasn't just some random text. It was someone watching me. I typed out, "Who is this?" If the first message had been the only one, I might have assumed it was a friend or family member messing around. But those other messages? No. This person was nearby. I stood up fast, flashlight slicing through the darkness as I scanned the trees in a full 360. My head was spinning from the weed, and now I was spiraling into full-blown paranoia. I reached for my bag and grabbed my Sig Sauer P365. I'd never fired it before, bought it for emergencies, but holding it gave me a bit of reassurance. I usually let my campfire burn out before bed, but not that night. Darkness was not an option. I crawled into my tent, heart pounding, gun by my side. I kept staring at my phone, waiting for another text, but nothing came. I turned back to my book, trying to focus, but it was pointless. I switched to watching random YouTube videos, true crime, ironically, just to keep my mind distracted. That's when another message came in, a reply to my earlier text. Doesn't matter anymore. I felt a fresh wave of adrenaline rush through me. I texted back, "How did you know I'm camping?" But again, silence. By now I couldn't stop obsessing over who it was. Was it someone from my past, still holding a grudge? How would they know I was here? I hadn't posted anything on social media. I hadn't told anyone my exact location. That's what scared me the most. An hour went by. My fire outside burned low. The glow was fading. The forest around me, without bugs or animals, was deathly quiet. Every time a video ended, I was hit with suffocating silence. Then, footsteps. That awful crunch of snow, slow and deliberate, getting closer, closer still. They stopped just outside my tent, maybe 6 feet away. I gripped my gun tighter, finger brushing the safety. Then flash, a bright light, lit up my tent for half a second. Someone had either shone a flashlight directly at me, or taken a photo. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I listened. The crunch of snow returned, this time moving away, and then of course my phone buzzed. It was a photo of my taken just seconds ago. Underneath it, "Have a good night's sleep." Something in me snapped. The fear turned to fury. Fueled by adrenaline, I burst out of the tent and fired 2 rounds straight into the air. The footsteps in the distance scattered, running away fast through the snow. It worked. They were gone, but that was somehow even worse. That meant they were close, watching, waiting. I shouted into the darkness, a warning laced with rage, then retreated back into my tent, still gripping the gun. No more footsteps, no more texts. I stayed up for hours, wide-eyed and alert, until the sun finally rose. That golden light streaming through the trees was the best thing I'd seen in days. I don't think the person expected me to be armed. I don't look like someone who'd own a gun. That was the first and only time I ever fired it, and it probably saved me from something I don't even want to imagine. It's been almost 5 years since that night, and I've never received another message. But the image of those boots crunching through the snow, the flash of light against my tent, the cold realization that I wasn't alone out there, that still lives rent-free in my mind. So to my viewers, if you ever feel like escaping into the wild, to get away from everything, remember this: the wilderness might be empty, but that doesn't mean you're alone. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments, what would you have done in my place? If I wasn't armed, I might not be here to tell this story. Growing up, every October, my family had this tradition. We'd spend a weekend up in northern Michigan at my Uncle Jim's place. He owned a 4-acre property nestled in dense, old forest. The house was big, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and could hold our whole extended family. 2 of the bedrooms were set aside just for the kids, 1 for me, my brother Adam, and our sister, the other for our 4 cousins, Jake, Joe, Jamie, and Christina. Uncle Jim was a hardcore outdoorsman, hunting, fishing, you name it. My dad, on the other hand, was a gentle soul, an animal lover, who only ever camped with Jim for the bonding, not the kills. Still, they were close. That year, part of Uncle Jim's woods had been marked with red paint to show the property line. Beyond that, county forest, miles of it, and no houses in sight. That afternoon, while our dads sipped beers on the back porch, we boys, me, Adam, Jake, and Joe, came up with the genius idea to go camping in the woods that night. We begged our dads, probably already buzzed. They agreed way too fast. Our moms weren't thrilled, but they didn't exactly forbid it either. So, our dad and Uncle Jim took us out past the red paint, into a clearing. My uncle claimed deer liked to sleep in. The moss was soft, the trees were tall, and the air was thick with pine and silent. My dad helped us pitch a big 4-person tent, giving a half-drunk crash course in camping essentials. By sunset, the tent was up, sleeping bags inside, flashlights packed. We ran around playing games until dinner. At the table, The moms voiced their concern again, said we were too young. My dad laughed it off with a joke. We'll hear their screams if anything goes wrong. That line would come back to haunt me. Later that night, they walked us back out with extra blankets and our flashlights. I brought a deck of Uno cards. Once we were zipped in, alone under the canopy of black trees, we lit up the tent with our flashlights, arranged in a circle. Uno passed the time, and things felt normal, until we heard it. A scream. Distant, high-pitched, like a girl. We froze, staring at one another. I remembered something, and tried to reassure everyone. Foxes. Foxes sound like women screaming. Joe, the youngest, looked like he was going to cry, but we all nodded and returned to the game. Then it happened again. This time closer, much closer. The tension in the tent snapped. We shut off the lights. No one moved. We curled up in our sleeping bags, holding our breath. No one wanted to run. It was that animal instinct, the fear that moving would alert whatever was out there. Even though we were just wrapped in nylon, the tent felt like our only shield. We whispered, trying to reason with it. Fox. Maybe. Probably. Hopefully. Then we heard the footsteps. Fast. Crunching leaves. Getting closer. Then silence. And then, the scream. It was right outside the tent. A woman's scream. Raw. Violent. Like something was being torn apart. And then the tent shook. Violently. We all screamed. Joe and Jake cried. Adam and I yelled for everyone to get out. I tore open the zipper, and one by one, we bolted into the black woods. Flashlights bouncing, lungs burning, hearts pounding. That run back to the house was a blur of terror. We screamed the entire way. When we reached the clearing, our parents were already outside. They'd heard us. We collapsed at their feet, trying to explain screams, footsteps, the shaking tent. Then I realized something. Jamie, Christina, my sister, they weren't outside. I turned on my dad, accusing him had one of them gone out there to mess with us. A prank. But he just looked confused, and led us inside. The girls were all in bed. That's when the mood changed. My dad and Uncle Jim grabbed rifles, and vanished into the woods. They came back later, pale and silent. No one was there. The next morning, we packed up the tent, and no one said much. We never camped out there again. In fact, none of us even went outside after dark for the rest of the trip. To this day, we don't know who or what was in those woods that night. All I know is, if I wasn't armed with that flashlight, if I hadn't unzipped that tent fast enough, we might not have made it out. If you made it this far, thanks for listening. If you've ever experienced anything like this, or have your own creepy camping story, drop it in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. I've got more stories coming that'll keep you up at night. Stay safe out there. Tonight's story is going to mess with your head. What I'm about to tell you still leaves me questioning what's real and what's not. And trust me, I don't say that lightly. This story didn't happen to a friend of a friend. It happened to me and my dad, and even now, 2 years later, I get chills just thinking about it. I know how it sounds. If I were you, I wouldn't believe it either. But every single word you're about to hear is true. 2 years ago, my dad and I took a trip to a remote camping spot deep in the countryside. We'd done this before. It was our way of escaping the noise of real life. The campground was surrounded by beautiful trails, rivers, and even a zip line set up, a little touristy. But the area held weight. It was built on ancient Native American land, spiritually rich, historically deep, and as we'd find out, maybe more alive than it should have been. The first night was perfect. Families were scattered around the other sites, fires flickering through the trees, the sound of laughter echoing under the stars. We roasted marshmallows, grilled hot dogs, cracked open a few beers, and chatted with the folks nearby. The peace you look for when you go camping, that's what we found. But peace can be deceiving, and it never lasts. By the second night, the park staff told us something strange. Nobody else had booked a site. We were alone. At first we thought it was a dream scenario, a whole campground to ourselves. Yes, please. We spent the day hiking, fishing, taking in the stillness. By the river, we even listened to a horror podcast, laughing at how spooky it sounded out in the wilderness. We were trying to be funny. We didn't realize how close we were to living something worse. As the sun dipped behind the trees, things shifted. The forest changed. The air grew thick, like it didn't want us breathing it. The twilight sky looked off, muted, too quiet. My dad turned to me and said, "Doesn't this feel off, like we're in some kind of dream?" He wasn't wrong. The woods stretched forever in every direction, and for the first time in years, I felt like we didn't belong. We walked in silence back to camp, both of us glancing over our shoulders like we expected something or someone to be right behind us. We clung to the fire, tried to keep things light, music, marshmallows, a little weed to shake the nerves. But the deeper the night got, the worse that feeling became. Then came the first bang, loud, sudden, like a tree splitting in half, not far from the river. We froze, flashlights on, nothing in sight. A joke about Bigfoot slipped out, but it felt hollow. A few minutes later, another bang, louder, farther, but heavier. The forest swallowed our lights, and then the third one closer again. The thing, whatever it was circling us. The fourth bang, right behind our tent. We jumped into the tent in pure panic. My dad grabbing the one weapon we had, a 3-inch knife, useless, but better than nothing. As I lay on the ground, trying not to breathe too loudly, my dad stopped at the entrance. He stared out into the dark, unmoving. "It's standing there," he whispered. "What's standing there?" I asked. "I don't know. It looked like a wall of darkness." That's when we heard it. A low vibration, not a sound, a feeling. It resonated in our chests. A deep hum that made it hard to breathe. Then a noise I can only describe as alien, guttural. Not animal, not human. Like a scream and a growl layered over each other. It reminded me of the Demogorgon from Stranger Things, but more primal, more real. We stayed frozen, paralyzed in fear. And then, blackout. No transition, just gone. One moment we were terrified. The next we were waking up. My dad still clutched the knife, my phone dead. His too. Both were fully charged the night before. We stepped out, peed back to back like we were guarding each other. Still pitch black, still silent. The fire was ash. The food, untouched. Nothing made sense. The woods felt wrong. Like we were walking through the aftermath of something we weren't meant to survive. We didn't speak much that morning, just packed up and left. Once in the car we finally admitted it. We both felt hunted, watched, and we both felt it wasn't human. My mom laughed it off, said maybe we hallucinated, or got drugged. But no substance can do what we experienced. No drug leaves your chest humming with the memory of something you never saw, but felt. My dad still won't talk about what he saw. He just says, it wasn't a person, and we haven't camped since. I don't think we ever will. If you've ever felt like something was watching you from the woods, maybe it was. Thanks for watching. If this story gave you chills, or reminded you of something you've experienced, let me know in the comment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss more unsettling stories like this one. Stay safe out there, and remember, the woods don't always let you leave the same.